Hi, welcome to episode 10 of a Bible Primer. My name is Doug. Today we're going to talk about the defeated kingdom. It's the defeated kingdom of Israel. They had such a good start for a while, but they have found themselves defeated and exiled. As we were saying, the nation of Babylon grew into a powerful nation. They beat Assyria, controlled all the land, and they came down to Israel, knocked on the door, and said, we want your gold and your silver. And at this point, Judah, Jerusalem, I'm going to start referring to it as Jerusalem because that's the centerpiece, says, you're too big and strong and powerful for us to engage in war. Come on in. What do you want? And so Nebuchadnezzar, who's the king of Babylon at the time, comes in and he says, well, I want some silver and I want some gold. And by the way, I want your smartest, most skilled, best people, the best of the best, the cream of the crop. And this is the first exile out of 3 exiles that Jerusalem will experience. Daniel gets exiled in this exile. But it's relatively a peaceful exile, a peaceful encounter, and Nebuchadnezzar collects some silver, some gold, some very smart, talented people, and on the way out the door he says, remember to pay your taxes, and off to Babylon he goes. And Jerusalem, they pay their taxes for a while. But then they begin to understand on the world stage, on the other side of Babylon is this nation called Persia, and it's starting to give Babylon some hard time, and it takes like 3 months to get from Babylon to Jerusalem for an army, and you know what? Maybe we can get away without paying our taxes, and they stop paying their taxes. Which was fine for a guy named Jehoiakim, because he's the king who stopped paying the taxes, and Nebuchadnezzar says, no, you need to pay your taxes, and sends the army that way, but Jehoiakim dies in the meantime, and his son Jehoiachin becomes king for all of 3 months. He's not the guy who did not pay the taxes, but he looks out the window one morning and sees Nebuchadnezzar's army and says, oh boy. He opens up the doors. They do not engage in fierce battle and fighting. Nebuchadnezzar comes on in and says, Jehoiachin, you're going to come with me back to Babylon. He says, and I'm going to take more silver, and you're going to pay your back taxes now. I'm going to take more silver, I'm going to take more gold, and I'm going to take basically the middle class back with me, and I'm going to leave you with the poor people, with the lower class people, and a little bit of silver and gold, so that maybe you can do some trading with your neighbors and pay your taxes next year. And on the way out, he says to him, he says, remember to pay your taxes. And he takes this booty back to Babylon. That was the second exile. And so the king, Zedekiah is the king. The king in Jerusalem at the time pays his taxes for a few years. But then it seems to be a family tradition. Maybe we won't pay our taxes. And stops paying his taxes because Persia is becoming a little more of a pain in Nebuchadnezzar's to Nebuchadnezzar on the other side. And Zedekiah is thinking maybe he can get away without paying the taxes, but Nebuchadnezzar says, no, you're going to pay the tax. He says, I'm going to put an end to this. And he sends his army in. They go to Jerusalem. This time there's a battle. Zedekiah is killed. The gates of Jerusalem are burned. The walls are knocked down. The city is destroyed. The temple is destroyed. He takes away all the gold, all the silver, and almost all the people into exile, into Babylon, and he leaves just the poorest of the poor people behind in a devastated land. And they spend, from this point, they spend about another 50 years in Babylon. All total, they spend, from the first exile, they spend about 70 years in exile in Babylon. After the end of those 70 years, this other nation of Persia that's been on the east of Babylon rises to power and beats Babylon. You might know the story in Daniel of the writing on the wall. That was the night that they marched into the city of Babylon. Anyways, Babylon falls. Persia is now ruler of the whole territory. Cyrus is the king of Persia, and Cyrus is very friendly toward the Jews. And he says, you guys want to go back? Go back to Jerusalem. If you don't want to go, and understand that they've been in exile for 70 years, there's a whole generation which is now born and raised in Babylon and established there. So a lot of people did not go back in the return, but a lot of people went back in the first return. They go back to Jerusalem, and the big thing that they do in this return is they rebuild the temple. They have some issues doing it with the neighbors, but they succeed. They rebuild the temple. All is well. A while later, priest by the name of Ezra says, I want to go back too. The Persians allow him to go back again with a group of people, a large group of people. They go back, and Ezra finds what are the Israelites doing, but the same thing that plagued them all their history. They're intermarrying with the people around them and beginning to pick up their ways, and Ezra puts an end to it. He's kind of strict, but he puts an end to it, that enough is enough, stop doing it, and spiritually straightens out Israel at the time. And then a while later, Nehemiah, who works in the king's court, wants to go back. Persia sends him back with more people. And when he gets there, he looks around and he says, the walls of the city are still knocked down. The gate is still burned and not usable. Glad we have a temple here, and we got a city here, but it's all open to abuse by our neighboring nations. And he builds the wall in record time and resets the gates. And Jerusalem becomes a city on a hill again. Then the story goes into what we would call the silent years. There's 400 years from the last time anything in the Bible, in the Old Testament, is written until the New Testament begins. And like we discussed before, a lot can happen in 400 years. So really quickly, what happened is Persia maintained rule over Jerusalem until a guy named Alexander the Great came to power. He was from Greece, and he came and conquered Persia, and therefore conquered all that Persia had. And Greece became the owner of Jerusalem and the territory, and it actually divided up into 3 Greek dynasties, but they were ruled by the Greeks until a guy named Pompey came in from Rome in 37 BC and walked into Jerusalem and said, I guess you're Roman now. And that is the setting of the gospel era when Jesus is born into. We will talk about that next time on a Bible Primer, the gospel era. era. See you then.